It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to 5. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Steph and I are so excited to share the mics today with two special guests.
In this episode, we're giving our listeners a behind-the-scenes sneak peek and preview of the soon-to-be wine app called My Wine Society. And we are also drawing the Patreon winner for June's drawing at the end of the show. So be sure to stay until the very end.
So without further ado, Skyping with us today are My Wine Society CEO Sean Evans and the Director of Channel Content and Brand Ambassador Christine Havens. Welcome to the Wine to Five podcast, Sean and Christine.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we got to let you guys know that, of course, we always start the podcast with what's in our glasses. And we understand you guys both have something special in the glass today. So we're going to start with Christine. Can you share with us what you're drinking?
Yeah, I've got a lovely wine from Brooks Winery. For me, Brooks is one of the most iconic wineries in Oregon. So I've got to give a shout out to my own home state. And this is the 2016 Amicus white wine. It's a blend of Riesling, Muscat, I'm reading off the back label, Pinot Blanc, Gewürztraminer, and Pinot Gris. And so Brooks is really, I think, a leader in Riesling production in Oregon, but they do these lovely blends too. And this particular bottle is just singing, really getting those high notes and sort of lovely Gewürztraminer florality that's just showing through. So that is what is in my glass.
Sounds delicious. What's the name of that wine again?
It's the Brooks Amicus white wine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting spelling. And, you know, I could be butchering it. I'm not going to promise I'm getting it right, but I'm doing my best.
We do that all the time on the show.
The gamut.
Doing our best.
Exactly. It's sort of the daunting aspects of our job.
That's right. Totally. Val, what have you got in your glass?
I also have an interesting wine in my glass. This is the 2016 Longridge The Emily. It's a Chardonnay Pinot Noir blend, if you can believe it. It's about 95% Chardonnay or so, about 5% of a little bit of oak-aged Pinot, judging by the website. It's a Western Cape, South Africa wine. And I've already showed the color to Steph. It looks like a Vin Gris or an Oeil de Pedry, kind of, you know, really pale onion skin kind of wine. And before we got on, I got to tell you guys, there's a story on the back of this bottle too. So Christine, you're talking about reading the wine bottle. I flipped the bottle over now that it's almost empty. And I found out that it was named for a British-born woman named Emily Hobhouse. Any of you guys know who she was?
I've never heard her name.
I have not either, because I didn't study a lot of South African history in school. I grew up in Pennsylvania. But apparently during the Anglo-Boer War in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, she was somewhat of a hero in liberating people from concentration camps, which I had no idea happened. And this wine is dedicated to her and brave women everywhere. So I'm raising this glass up pretty high today, as you guys can imagine.
I'm going to give you a cheers virtually.
Yes. I mean, amazing what you learn and what you're inspired to Google from a bottle of wine.
So true. That's what's so cool about wine as opposed to many other beverages.
And it's delicious too. But Sean, I think you hinted at a Pinot possibly as well.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, one of our founders is the owner of Feast at Ford in Napa, and one of her vintner partners is a brand called Be Wise Vineyards out of Sonoma. And Katie at Feast was nice enough to gift me with this 2015 Pinot Noir from Be Wise. So I'm sitting out here at the deck of the Feast at Ford studio, right across from Oxbow Public Market, downtown Napa, doing a little walkthrough prior to our Napa launch event next month, and sipping on this lovely Pinot Noir. And I'm not going to attempt to do the tasting notes like Christine did, because I'm more the business guy. I leave the epic explanations of wine to Christine Havens for sure.
That's a good call.
No, that's
Good.
fine. That's fine. And we did see some pictures of Sean had a video on earlier, and we're all kind of jealous. We're like, dude, go inside. It's too beautiful out. It's just,
Yeah.
we're all sitting in our
Jeez.
desks. Steph, now you've got in your glass something very similar to mine, kind of, but not.
Right. Well, it is pink and it is a Von Gris, but it's from California, from Terre Rouge. It's the 2016 Von Gris d'Amador, and it is a Grenache Mourvedre Roussanne Grenache Blanc blend. And right out of the Sierra foothills there, part of that Amador area. And it's not as light in color as I would have thought, even though it's kind of a Provence style, but it's very juicy and has some nice structure to it too. So nice wine. I would buy this again and have been enjoying it for 2 days now. Yes. But, I think we should keep sipping and keep finding out more about My Wine Society. So Sean, you are going to be up first. So tell us a little bit about yourself and an overview of My Wine Society and why did it need to exist?
The myself part first is pretty easy. I went to business school in Oregon and have been, kind of an entrepreneurial spirit my whole life, running a boutique management consulting firm, working with startups, branding and marketing for companies, small to medium cap companies in a lot of different industries. And speaking of the Sierra foothills, I have to do a little plug for my aunt and uncle and cousins who own a winery up in Placerville, the El Dorado Hills, on the way up there to Tahoe, called Holly's Hill Winery, or Holly's Hill Vineyards, I believe. So knowing that I was working with companies on branding, marketing, and sales strategies, I was up there for Thanksgiving a couple years ago, and my cousin said, Sean, we really need your help. We're struggling to retain and increase our wine club membership. So I asked some exploratory questions and tried to just get to the bottom of, what the winery was dealing with in terms of their wine club membership, their marketing, and the way in which they kind of operated their outward facing business, in terms of the communication with the public and their loyal customers. And after a few questions, I figured out, I said, well, what's wrong with the wine club members you have? Don't you have enough? I know you have a few thousand. That should be fine. And without getting too morbid, she said, well, they're all dying and we're not reaching the next generation. And that really struck a chord with me because after, talking to a few other people in the business, I realized that it's not an untrue statement for a lot of wineries. They have this old style of running businesses and it's proven and it's great. And many of them focus really heavily on the product, which is making wine. And that is really great for us wine drinkers. But they really have no knowledge or even interest in, the marketing aspects, the logistic aspects, the business portion. And some of them do. I don't want to be throwing out blanket statements. But, with our family in particular, that was a question that they had. And so that got me thinking on a broader scale. Well, if this is happening, across the industry, is there a way we can address that? And right around the same time as when I had a partnership with iLab Technologies that created this app platform that's a really robust person-to-person engagement platform. And we were able to repurpose that technology to give wineries a unique place to talk to, engage, and reward their loyal customers. So we really think that it's answering that core pain point within the winery industry of how do we reach our customers in a real way that feels organic in nature after they've left our property? And then how do we reward the behavior that we attach a value to? So that's what we're hoping to bring to the industry on a global scale.
First of all, it's interesting that you started kind of in the periphery of the wine business, kind of indirectly, and now you're finding yourself kind of somewhat in the middle of it. Would you say that's a true statement?
Yeah, it's definitely the ramp up, the global launch of this thing over the next year is definitely throwing me right in the middle of, dealing with a lot of people that are much more educated and experienced than I am in wine specifically. And so I've had to do quite a bit of either education on my own part or bowing out of some conversations as I did earlier and deferring to more intelligent people around wine than myself, like Christine.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that bottle of intelligence to the table, because you look like you knew what you were doing when you were sipping on it. So I think you're doing just fine.
You're doing fine.
Doing fine. Doing fine. And that brings us to Christine. Speaking of doing fine, what is it our listeners should know about you and how it brought you to the My Wine Society party?
Oh my goodness. Well, that is a long and winding trail, but I will try to condense it as much as I can for you. I started out as a vintner. So my background is in winemaking. I learned to make wine in Southeast Washington at the very tiny, and then just getting off the ground school of viticulture and enology at Walla Walla Community College. I was seduced into it, really, because I happened to meet the guy that was co-founding the program, and he invited me to a lecture. And that was 18 years ago, and I'm still in the industry today. Around 2011, though, I decided to depart from the wine industry, from actual production. I had a back injury, and my doctor said, look, you're not going to make wine anymore. And for me, that was like, I had a moment, like, how can I stay in the industry? What can I do that's meaningful? And so I started writing. And in that same year, Vivino, as you know, the app was really just sort of taking off in the U.S. The founders had moved their offices from Copenhagen to San Francisco, and they reached out to me, and we had a long sort of dialogue because I sort of immediately started working on the app. And over the course of the last, what is it now, like 7 years, I've been the number one user. I'm usually in the top, I would say 5 to 10 globally in terms of numbers of followers. So if you think about the app in its perspective, it's got 26 million users globally. So I have a pretty big global audience that I talk to. And I also feel like it gives me insight into what people are drinking and doing and tasting and interested in all over the world. But Vivino sort of had a problem. It didn't have an opportunity for people to interact on the app other than through some basic comments. And so really passionate, devoted users kind of branched off in splinter groups and formed their own forums to talk to each other. And so these meetups still happen. They happen all over the world. I get invited to them. I've gone as far as Manila to meet other users who are on the app. I see them when I travel over to Europe. And so when Sean approached me with this project, it really piqued my interest because I said, here's a problem that could be solved. There's something about the desire for people who love wine and who are passionate about wine to really get together and sort of talk to one another directly. So the app itself and the app environment has this rich kind of interface that gives you like a WhatsApp chat so people can have private chats. And I thought, this is really sort of the things that I thought could be solved with Vivino that this app sort of has. And it's such a different animal. So in this new role, I'm director of channel content. And in a way for me, that is just an incredible role because I'm getting to really interface with writers and journalists and people who produce video content and podcasts like yourself. And so there's all this enormous talent that I can kind of bring forward and showcase on the app through the dedicated channels that the app has. That is something that I haven't seen anywhere else. So there's some uniqueness there, and my hunches, my senses, because I've been in an app environment so long, that this is going to be very compelling for end users because they can get together and interact in something that feels familiar, like Instagram. At the same time, they can take a deep dive and get involved in rich content without ever having to leave the app. So there's some real, for me, there was some intrigue in trying to, being coaxed on board to this project. And it's just, it's incredibly exciting to watch it evolve and unfold. And so for me, being part of this particular team has been incredibly fun.
How are people going to use it? You kind of mentioned a few things that it was similar to Instagram in some ways. How would somebody go about once they download it? What are they doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's kind of two parts to that. So there's a default experience if someone downloads the app, as an end user outside of a specific winery. And when they go on, it feels very Instagram-y at first in terms of there's a recognition wall, activity wall that people post. But what the technology has done has married a reward gamification system with all of the actions on the platform. So there's a series of buttons across the top menu bar that allows you to track your wine actions. And that wine button is specifically intended for those people that are planning, weekend getaways to a wine region, and they want to share their experience. So they want to tell people that they attended a wine tasting or found their new favorite bottle of wine or met a sommelier, and they're able to post with, a few clicks of the button, and that they took that action, and then they're also able to verify that action with a photo if they choose, to kind of show off their weekend of wine tasting. And then there's a number of life actions as well, and a different button that promotes healthy living. So it talks about eating a healthy meal, or went and worked out, or got home safely using rideshare, or any of those daily actions that can happen on a wine tasting weekend or just in general. And all of those actions carry with it inherent value on the back end of the platform, and are tracked and rewarded, in addition to having activity cards that pop up on that recognition wall. So the science behind those things is really to give the end user a reason to keep coming back and sharing their experiences in the wine industry, and then giving other users a point of reference for a specific region or a specific group of people and what sort of actions they're taking. So that's really the baseline kind of default, is recording and rewarding those actions in and outside of the wine industry. And then, as Christine touched on, there's a chat function that's really proprietary in nature, in that it allows you a lot of the same comforts of WhatsApp or group chat, but it expands beyond that to even doing smart-based chats or broadcasts without having to go outside for some text company, where you can actually send a broadcast out to a group of people, which, if you're unfamiliar with that terminology, that basically means I could send a text out to you four, and you read it, but you're not able to respond. So that's what a broadcast text message is like. And so you're able to do a number of different unique functions just within the chat feature that enable users to have a different experience there. And then the other function that's currently turned on is the channel function, which is akin to, an entire YouTube button where people can upload their unique content around the wine space. And that's really where Christine has been instrumental in curating the My Wine Society default experience channel content. And that's, like she said, it's a really cool place for users to go and read unique contributions, listen to podcasts such as yours, watch videos, etc. So those are a few of the functionality or actions you can take on the default experience of the platform.
There's really this whole other level, too, that Sean hasn't touched on yet, and that is that wineries are able to have their own experience within the app. And that's something, again, that is, I'm a frequent app user, and I'm a former boutique winery owner. So for me, this kind of functionality is deeply meaningful. And I think, Sean, you can talk to that as well. It's kind of incredible that a winery can have almost like an app inside of this overarching app, which I've personally never seen that before in terms of tech.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really the piece that differentiates the value of the platform, is that ability for an end user to jump from this default experience and picture Instagram. If you were, it's like going to someone's page, except with all this expanded functionality available to it. So you're able to jump to the Benessere experience, for example, or the Oberon experience, which is a Michael Mondavi brand that we work with. And within that experience, it's unique to that winery. So they're able to customize the menu buttons, the end user interaction, the branding of the experience. And you really feel as a user as if you're living within their that winery's app, and you're able to chat directly with the winery. You're able to read custom channel pieces that they've put up themselves. You're able to log your tasting menu, and that's part of the cool functionality, where if you're live in that tasting, you can jump over to that winery's experience and log your tasting journey that day or that weekend through there, and then you can visit their store right from your app and purchase the wine that you want or join their wine club. So it's really like a private portal for the wineries to engage with their customers. And that's where I alluded to in the very beginning, is finding a way for wineries to engage with their customers that hopefully drives retention and organic interaction between the customers and the winery.
And the wineries club members can also talk to one another, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of the cool part about the gamification aspects of the platform. So what you alluded to is when you do jump that experience to, say, Vanessa Ray or Oberon or one of these other wineries, BYs, you're seeing a different recognition wall, because the users that have tagged themselves as members of that winery, their experiences and activities are showing up on that wall more frequently and primarily over a user that's maybe a part of a different winery or part of the default app. So you're exactly right. You're actually seeing the activity from other club members or loyalists of that wine brand and their activity within that space. And as you jump experiences, and this scales exponentially. So as an individual user, you could be a member of 10 different wine clubs, but as a global user, you could jump to 1,000 different experiences. And every time you're going to get a different activity feed, and you're going to be a part of a different grouping of individuals, with different languages on the walls and different, it's really amazing. And once the end users learn the breadth of that ability to jump between experiences from Bordeaux to Australia to Napa, I think they're going to be blown away in the organic level of interaction that they can have with those users from any country in the world.
Well, a lot of people connect on Twitter and develop these friendships and relationships, and then they go meet one another, or, they find out they're going to be at the same conference or the same concert or any kind of a thing. And people end up having lifelong friends that they admit, we met on Twitter or one of these social channels. And I think it's so, even, some podcast listeners meet each other on social networks because they just listen to the same shows, and I can really see how My Wine Society brings these people who really love wine together just like that, and they go, hey, let's go meet up at this such and such winery, in a different country or a different state. But I can just see how that has so much potential.
Yeah, to that point, people want a safe place that they can go and talk about their passion. And Facebook and these other social platforms are really great in that you get a broad range of topics and news and experiences from your friends. But, a great example of this or case study is the 18 Birdies app, which is a social engagement app around golf. And a lot of my friends are on that. And it's a place where they're not going to go on Facebook and share that they shot an 89 today and they used XYZ clubs, because no one on Facebook cares. They want to see pictures of kids and dogs. But
that is just funny. Or cats.
Yeah, or cats.
I won't promise though that we won't have dogs of Instagram that won't show up in our feed from time to time.
Yeah.
We try to cater to a broad group of enthusiasts, and dogs and cats are definitely part of that.
Oh yeah, there are whole books dedicated to winery dogs.
Oh yes.
There you go.
Oh yes. So you will see some dogs and cats in the feed, I'm sure, but mostly wine.
Excellent.
Hopefully not drinking wine.
Well, maybe.
Well, they have wine for cats now too. So
they do. They do.
Hey, Sean, I wanted to ask you, since we were mentioning gamification earlier, and I have to tell you, it was so funny. I was sitting in a bar with another podcaster a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about apps. And I said, I personally couldn't get into Vivino. I tried it, and then I got logged out, and then I never logged back in because I couldn't remember my password. But he said the problem is with many apps is there's no gamification. You were saying that science shows that gamification is important to keep people engaged. And we're kind of curious that since it's already been voiced to me that is a big need in the wine community, and My Wine Society is going to bring that into the picture. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why this gamification is important, or did we kind of talk too much about that with the award wall and all that.
No, yeah, that's a really important piece to it. So Skylab has done a great job, actually. They have an entire division of their company led by the head of behavioral psychology for UC Irvine. You know what? I'm blanking on his last name because we all call him Dr. Al around the office.
All right.
But he's the head of behavioral psychology for UC Irvine, and the founder of Skylab, Dean Gray, came from Amway, from the MLM early days. You know, made his buco bucks there, and then tried to take his MLM, community management, behavioral psychology, you know, inherent knowledge, and translate that over to the mobile space, which is how Skylab was formed and came into existence. And they really piggybacked off Dr. Al's research about how behavioral psychology translates to the mobile space and to apps, and how can we leverage inherent human behavior and psychology and drive positive value-based actions. Because what you're seeing now, and, you know, this has actually reached a crescendo and relevant in society today, as proven by, you know, Zuckerberg himself being pulled in front of Congress, that social media is driving either neutral or oftentimes negative behavior. And they're not driving it on purpose, but there's nothing inherent in their technology that rewards any kind of other behavior, right? So similar to the news, you don't hear in the news about everything that went right today. You know, you only hear about things that went wrong because that's what the news wants to report on. So that's what's kind of accidentally, you know, unintended consequences of social platforms as they exist today. That's kind of what's happened, right? So unless you have purposeful thought and planning into your social accounts and your social behavior, it tends to trend negative. So what they did was they said, how can we implement inherent human traits, behavioral psychology, and the need to feel rewarded into an app platform and drive those positive value-based actions. So they created a reward structure around that of virtual high fives, i.e. badges and activity cards, where users collect these badges and feel as though they're winning, you know, the game of life, so to speak, by doing these positive things and checking these things off the list on a daily basis, you know, going to work out. And then you win a badge that says you worked out 10 days in a row. Congratulations. You're in the top 20 percentile of users, you know, something like that. So when you're winning these badges as an end user, you get that little adrenaline rush. You know, you get that little hit of dopamine that says, wow, I just accomplished something, even though it's, you know, it's just literally a virtual high five from this app, but you want to continue that behavior because you're getting positively rewarded for that. So the next step that we've taken is using friends in the industry like yourselves and these wineries and Feast It Forward and some of our other early partners like Soiree Home and, you know, these other wine industry people. And then we're going to expand that as well to global brands, you know, like BMW and Hilton and these larger brands. But we've married them with some of these badges so that not only will end users receive these virtual high fives, but if they're really good at something, they might receive a physical high five as well in the form of a discount code for 50% off a wine club membership, you know, something like that. So that ability to positively, either virtually or physically reward action-based behavior, I think is a really important aspect and going to ultimately be the decider in the success of the platform as a whole.
And of course, I can't help but I'm reverting back to media theory, technological determinism, how we are impacted by technology, or are we changing the way we do things because of technology or constructivism? Did you guys get into all that?
Yeah, and that's a big topic of conversation. And that touches on my original point is, are people reverting to behavior that we don't necessarily want to see because no one's pulling the strings, so to speak? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's really easy to go on Facebook or Instagram and see guys jumping off of roofs onto tables or girls taking their clothes off or something like that because there's no rules. It's what gets the most likes, what gets the most clicks. And that clickbait society is in some small way what we're hoping to curb with these different niche market behaviors and really trying to drive that behavior in a positive direction.
Yeah, that's good because I come from the dystopic versus the utopian theory of technology. But that's just me, and you kids get off my lawn. But we should probably move on, Steph.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the other thing is everybody's wondering, when is it launching? When can they download it and become a part of this My Wine Society? So give us the goods, the dates, all of that.
Of course. So we've been doing kind of an alpha test period leading up to this point to where we brought on a number of users, a small handful, into this pre-beta version, meaning we weren't even live on the App Store. Like, you had to go through a number of steps to even get the pre-beta version on your phone to test it out. And that was, really on purpose to see how people were going to interact, to work out a lot of the tech bugs behind the scenes, and to make sure that our internal team had their stuff figured out. And then this Napa launch July 14th is going to be really big because that's the first real beta test region that we're going into, where we're going to test the app in a much broader scale. So we hope between the months of July and August to capture around 2,000 to 5,000 end users in the Napa region. And the app will be on the store, so anyone in the world will be able to download it. That's not the thing. We just are going to really focus our efforts on the partner wineries and winemakers that are in the Napa region and allow them to test it. And because of our strong relationship with Feast It Forward, we're able to really kind of control the majority of that test group. And then we'll be launching in beta in 5 other regions over the next 7 months. The next of which will be Temecula, LA, as kind of a joint region. And then most likely Valle de Guadalupe and potentially Cape Town, South Africa, and then somewhere in Australia and the south of France. So that kind of rounds out our next 7 months of beta test launch regions. And we hope that after really capturing, decent sized audiences in those regions and hearing their pain points and watching them navigate through the platform, that we can eclipse kind of that 100,000 user mark. And that will be enough of a data grab for us to determine if we're bringing real value and answering the questions of the wine industry through the platform. And then at that point, we will hopefully be doing just a large scale rollout and going global.
So you guys will have kind of a feedback channel as well. So let's say all of our listeners, of course, you're going to tell them how to get the app, how to get the My Wine Society app. And let's say they're all sitting there clicking away on it and they go, oh, wait, there's a bug here. Or, ooh, I would love to see this or whatever. You guys have an easy way for them to interact with you and your developers and provide feedback?
Definitely. So that's an important point, is any users that go and download the app right now, you are officially part of the beta test group, the beta test public group. And we would love your feedback because that's the intent of the next 7 months of our life. So inside of the app itself, there's a little 3-bar menu tab in the top left corner. And that is a place where you can both jump winery experiences and visit all the wineries that have their own experience on the app platform. But it's also a place where you can find the little support button. And if you click that support button, it goes straight to an info@MyWineSociety email account. And that's where you report those pain points or those bugs. And we've got a really dedicated team made up of a lot of cool people like Christine Havens that are ready and waiting. So yeah, that's we would love people to jump on and just explore the app and test out all the functionality.
I think people are going to be really excited about this. I know Val and I are, and that's why we wanted to partner with you guys and get in on it and have a Wine 25 podcast channel on the app and have people find us there and then interact with us. Because, I think this is going to be really life-changing for this wine lifestyle. I love, too, how with the rewards and some of the, health and wellness stuff incorporated into it, that is something that Val and I have talked about over the years, is one of the reasons why she and I even came together, because we have a lot of the same lifestyle philosophies, and having a healthy wine lifestyle where, you exercise, and, you eat right, and you take a Uber, or, you do these things, and you still enjoy wine and food and culture. And, so I think that there's so much to look forward to. And I'm so glad that we were able to get this sneak peek with you both here.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that we do have a wellness channel that's under development. So you are speaking to the choir. We're excited to also kind of promote that idea of healthy lifestyle. I think it's something that is really key right now, and it's something that's kind of a hot topic amongst industry professionals. But it's something that's being embraced by the general public as well. So that is one channel that we have that we will probably be releasing in the near future, that I'm also incredibly excited about.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, so here's the part of our podcast where we love to ask you for your embarrassing wine stories, and whatever you've got, we want to hear it, because the listeners love this segment. So, Christine, you go first.
Oh man, that is a tough one. But I can think of a time though when I really screwed up about 400 gallons of Gewürztraminer. And if you know, the TTB requires you to track your wine to the milliliter. They're very, very precise, right? And so it's very punishing when you mess up a wine, because you have to film it, right? So, you're there, you're filming it, going down your French drain, you're sort of crying inside. So, but this is part of the gig, though. I mean, you make mistakes in life, you learn from them, and you move on. And now at the other end of it, I can appreciate Gewürztraminer that's well done, because I can go, oh yeah, that time that I messed up that Gewürztraminer, I know how hard this is to make. White wines aren't easy.
Yeah, an appreciation.
Just totally. This was in my youth, my younger days of winemaking, when I was still learning and I didn't have a mentor, and so it was just a disaster. And after that, I think we stuck more with hardy reds, because they're a lot more forgiving than delicate whites are in Washington State. So yeah, that was my big disaster that I.
And you lived to tell about it.
I lived to tell about it, and now so appreciate all these beautiful whites that I get to drink as a wine writer on the other side of it.
And I'm sure listeners right now are Googling you pouring 400 gallons of down the drain on YouTube.
There's no public video. Sorry to say.
Just making sure.
That stuff gets submitted to the TTB, and it's under lock and key. I would never. And as a boutique producer, that hurts. That really hurts.
400 gallons of tears with that.
Yes, 400 gallons of my soul.
Yeah.
And that would be the name of this podcast. 400 gallons.
That's good. Val always comes up with something really clever. I like it.
But yes, I have messed up wine. It's kept me grounded. It keeps me humble as a wine writer. And I'm okay with it.
That's awesome.
Well, Sean, what have you learned, lived to tell?
Oh man. Well, I wish mine was as cool of a wine industry type of story as messing up a barrel of wine in production. But mine is more along the consumption lines of embarrassing stories. And I took a trip to Australia and met some friends out there, and of course kind of bragged that I was from Davis, which is near Napa. And if you ever wanted to come out, I of course could take you on this epic wine tasting adventure in Napa Valley. And so they did. 6 months later, they came out to California, and they had this great trip, and they stayed in the city in San Francisco. And we did this day of Napa Valley tasting, and then we were going to stay at my parents' house in Davis and then continue on the next day to my family's winery up in El Dorado Hills. And it all went great. I mean, we did have an amazing day in Napa Valley and ended with a great dinner and went home. And my parents, being the lovely hosts that they are, had this whole game night planned for us where they had even more wine waiting for us. And we ended up playing board games and drinking into the night. And the next day we had this awesome tasting at my family's winery, of course, scheduled, which was an hour and a half away. And at around 10:30 in the morning, I finally was able to come out into, the public area where everyone was sleeping in the different guest rooms. And it looked like a war zone. I mean, everyone was just spread out everywhere and not moving at all. So by the time we finally did get to my family's winery, and I was trying to, show them that we have our own winery and this is my cousin and my aunt and uncle, none of us were even in a state to taste wine, much less enjoy the trip. So my family was pretty disappointed that they didn't get to entertain my Australian friends and show them the great wine that they had produced.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Aww.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch out for those game nights.
I know. And you think canasta's for, these grandmas sitting around a card table, but it got us pretty wasted that night.
Oh my, I love it. Well, guys, is there anything else our listeners should know about this launch? When this airs, you guys will have 3 weeks until you launch in Napa. Just go ahead and let them know anything else they need to know before My Wine Society kind of debuts.
Other than, just go on the App Store or the Google Play Store and search My Wine Society, and it'll be up there. And we actually just got an email today from Jason. He's our Planet Architect. And he scrubbed the app today, so you ladies might actually see some really limited functionality if you go on there today, because we have to really submit a baseline version to Apple and the Google Play Store to make sure that they're accepted. But it should be live in the next week. And anyone that's hearing this that wants to go on and play around with it and test the app. And then the last thing I would say is July 14th is our launch at the Feast at Ford Studio in Napa. It's open to the public. We're going to have 16 vintners pouring their wines. There's a little passport card on the app that you go around and get a tasting. I believe it's $50 for 16 tastings, so it's not a bad price. And then, of course, you get to explore the Feast Studio and take part in the beautiful scenery that is Napa. And that's July 14th.
Okay. And then on the social spaces?
At My Wine Society. All of them.
There you go.
There you go. And you can chat with any of us. We're all there. We're all present. We want to field your questions. We want to be part of your community. So find us.
Nice. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been so fun, and we'll continue to have more conversations and probably have you back on the show to talk about what's the latest and greatest later on.
That'd be so awesome. Thanks so much for having us on, guys. I really appreciate it. And I'm stoked that you guys are on the platform. It's going to be fun.
Yes, and thank you for including us in the platform and the launch. And it's going to be a celebration. So you guys have a great rest of your day on the West Coast.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure.
Cheers, you guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
What a great interview. Those guys are fun, and I can't wait to continue to work with them.
Oh, I know. They have been such a joy to work with, and it's exciting to watch something because we've actually known about this for a while, and it's something we've been kind of watching develop. And I have to admit, I'm not as app happy as I should be, because it's like, oh, I got to log out, log back in because it's going through the whole thing, the whole
scrub.
But it's been interesting watching the development of this.
Yeah.
So I think listeners, again, this is going to be in beta starting in July. And we're excited because I know you guys are all loving to be part of a community. And can you imagine having a community that's just for wine people?
Right. That's what's, very impactful.
Yeah.
So, and we know that our patrons are going to love this and be a part of it too. So we want to give shout outs to our patrons. But before that, thank you again to Sean Evans and thank you, Christine Havens. And the shout out to Sean's family making wine. So thank you again to Sean Evans and Christine Havens and to all of our patrons. We are so grateful. Robin from Girls Gone Grape, our Reserva Superiore supporter. Auntie in Georgia, our Reserva supporter. And our Tenacious Tasters. Jeff E. from the award-winning We Like Drinking podcast. I can't even say it without smiling. Sebastian of Sassy Italy Tours. Jen in Maryland. David and Lisa in Illinois. And Anne-Marie in Virginia.
Our It's Not 5 o'clock and We Don't Care listeners, Meg in South Dakota, Clay in Arizona, John, Andrew, and Azwani in California, Chantel in Ontario, Canada, Mary Lou in Pennsylvania, and The Bone, Kathy in Georgia, Chris, Janet, and Diane in Colorado, Stephen, Renee in Illinois, Kathy in Tennessee, Ashley in North Carolina, and Sean in Ohio.
And our Tastemaker listeners, David in Scotland, Carol in Kentucky, Karen in California, Chip and Katie in Pennsylvania, Serena in New York, and Danielle. And to find out more about becoming a patron, you can check out our patreon.com/wine25 podcast page and find out what that all means because we have a monthly drawing. Speaking of,
it's
time for the June drawing. We are going to pick a winner from our Patreon list.
And what are we giving away this month, Steph?
We have a copy of Jennifer Simonetti Bryan, Master of Wine, her book called Rosé Wine, The Guide to Drinking Pink. And we had Jennifer back on in episode 128. And she also is the author of the 1 Minute Wine Master. And she was a hoot on our show. And she is really out there doing some great education. And so she donated a book just for our patrons. So, and if you haven't checked out that episode with her, that was back in September of 2017. So thank you, Jennifer. And who's the lucky winner, Val?
Okay, so I've got this randomization app. And look, I can shake it.
Shake it. Oh, that's so cool. I just saw it. Now wait.
And it changes color. Okay, hang on, shake it. Can you see the number?
Hold on. There's a glare. 87.
Okay, 87.
Who is 87?
87 is, go to spreadsheet, Sebastian?
Sebastian! I think he wins all the time.
He wins all the time.
That's true. Hey, some people just have luck on their side.
Yeah, apparently, Sebastian, you are a lucky, lucky guy. Congratulations, Sebastian! Find more good stuff on our website at wine2five.com. We've got a show support page, which has our affiliates and more information on Patreon there. And one last thing, if you guys could please leave us a review on iTunes, it does help other listeners find the Wine to Five podcast, but we love that so many of you are finding it. We will read your review on the show. And between each episode, you can find us on the social spaces at Wine to Five. I'm Val. You can connect with me on Twitter at WineGal Unboxed and everywhere else as Vino with Val. And Steph, I got on Pinterest today.
You did? What did you put on Pinterest?
Well, like the Nebbiolo episode, and then I went over to the Wine to Five Pinterest page and started moving some stuff. And I'm like, no, this is crack. And I got off.
Yeah.
But I was on there briefly. I'm like, no, you could get into this Pinterest like time warp and never leave.
I was on Pinterest actually a lot on Tuesday for my personal Pinterest because I did a rosé wine tasting event for Women Give. And I wanted to make sure that I had a, decent rosé. What is it called? Board. A board.
Yeah.
So if anybody asks, well, what rosés do you like? I could say, well, go check out my rosé Pinterest board.
Well, Steph has been doing our Pinterest account for Wine to Five, and she is an absolute Pinterest beast. I'm just going to say it. I was so surprised. I'm like, holy crap. I thought it was like, just kind of like Google Plus. It's like every once in a while I go there. But no, Steph, she's the wine heroine. She's all over the Pinterest, but you can find her as the wine heroine all over the social spaces. So thank you, Steph. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to the guys at My Wine Society.
And thank you, Val.
And thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wine to Five podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.